And let me let in the other participants into the Zoom.
By the way, we do need a quorum. Anything else you need from me?
Hello.
One moment, you will be connected.
Thank you.
Okay, we are live. We are being recorded. We are streaming on YouTube, and we are on the channel.
Okay.
Okay, welcome everybody. We're gonna hold off on just a second until we have our last in-person member arrive, but that'll happen shortly.
One thing we forgot, Jody, the plaques.
So since we don't have nameplates, what I'm going to ask everybody to do when we start is just everybody identify themselves. Okay. I guess we'll do the board first, and then we'll go to. I'll sort of call you out.
Sure.
Hey, member Parson, member Crew.
Okay, good afternoon, and welcome to the Planning Board meeting of February 8th, 2023. My name is Ian Calder-Piedmont. I will be chairing this session. First of all, I just want to say that our real chairman, Sam Kramer, had a medical emergency and is not able to join us in person. He will be Zooming in. He'll be monitoring all the comments, so he's here, just not in person. Luckily, he did a very good job, I think, of laying the path forward for today and tonight, and I'm just going to follow that plan as closely as we can. As you all know, this meeting is about the Wayne-Scott Commercial Center public hearing for the DEIS and the subdivision plat. We have only one other matter on the agenda tonight, and that's an extension of time for the comment period. The public hearing where you can speak in person is today and another session tonight. However, written comment will be extended for 30 days. Because of an incomplete notice posted on the town website, we want to make sure that we extend that time period from what we originally planned on to make sure there's a full 30 days for everyone to be heard. So I'll start by reading that resolution. In the matter of Wayne-Scott Commercial Center preliminary subdivision for an extension of public comment period until March 13th, 2023. I have read the resolution and moved for its adoption.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passed and carried. So now on to the big matter. I'll start by reading the public hearing notice. Take notice that a joint public hearing on the preliminary subdivision plan and accepted DEIS will be held before the East Hampton Town Planning Board at Local TV, LTV Studios, 75 Industrial Road, Waynescott, on Wednesday, February 8th at 3 to 5:30 p.m. and will resume at 6:30 p.m. or as soon thereafter as this matter may be heard. To consider the application of Waynescott Commercial Center preliminary subdivision, approval pursuant to Chapter 220, Subdivision of Land, and Chapter 193, Open Space of the East Hampton Town Code, to divide a 3,071,497 square foot parcel, approximately 70 acres, into 50 lots, with most lots approximately 1 acre in size, and the southernmost lots, number 21 and 22, to be approximately 4.5 acres in size and contain an existing ready-mix concrete plant and a 2B 6.5 acre in size and contain an existing masonry and tile supply yard, respectively. The parcel is located on the north side of Montauk Highway, Waynescott, and is situated in a commercial industrial CI zoning district as shown on the official zoning map of the town of East Hampton and are identified on the Suffolk County tax map as parcels number 300-192-2-62, 63, 6.4, 6.5, 6.6, 6.7. Subject application is classified as an unlisted action pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, SECRA, Part 617 of the New York Code of Rules and Regulations, and Chapter 128 Environmental Quality Review of the Town Code. A draft environmental impact statement, DEIS, Volume 1 and 2, and Appendix A through 7, preliminary subdivision plans prepared by Nelson, Pope, and Voorhees, dated revised November 29, 2022, are available for inspection at the Planning Board offices, 300 Panago Place, Suite 103, East Hampton, New York, and are available on the town website, https://ehampton.ny.gov/675/Waynescott Commercial Center. The public hearing will be held live and in person by the Planning Board and will be available electronically by video and teleconferencing and will be televised on local TV, LTV, Channel 22, and available for live stream on the LTV website, https://www.ltveh.org. The public shall be permitted to appear in person, but may also provide comments on the matter being heard by calling 351-888-6331. Any person or party wishing to be heard with respect to the foregoing may do so in person or by agent or by attorney or by call-in to the live stream or by written comment addressed to the Planning Board, 300 Panago Place, Suite 103, East Hampton, New York, 11937. Written public comments may also be submitted to the Planning Board by email to planningboard@ehamptonny.gov. All comments must be received by Planning Board on or before 4 p.m. February 28th, 2023, which has just been extended to March 13th, so I'm not sure if I've got to change that in any way for the notice.
I think you basically just covered it.
Just did? Okay. And with that, dated January 11th, 2023, Chairman Samuel Kramer. Secondly, I would like to read a brief statement. As I said, and anybody's been following, which is probably many of you, we've laid out this process, but I would like to read some opening remarks from our chairman just to reiterate how things are going to work tonight. Today, the Planning Board welcomes members of the public to share their thoughts and comments on the Waynescott Commercial Center, proposed 50-lot subdivision plat, and the draft environmental impact statement, DEIS, prepared by WCC. Obtaining your comment is a critically important step in both the Subdivision and State Environmental Quality Review Act process reviews. As a first step, we want to alert you to the Planning Board's extension of written public comments till March 13th, 2023. The Planning Board was advised and confirmed last week that there were some missing pages in the DEIS appendix posted on the town's webpage in December. The applicant provided a replacement document that has been posted, but to assure that a full 30-day written comment period, we are extending the written comment period to close of business 4 p.m. on March 13th, 2023. In order to facilitate hearing from as many members of the public as we can, we are taking speakers in the order that they sign up and limiting speakers to 3 minutes each at this afternoon session from 3:30 to 5:30, and this evening from 6:30 to 8 p.m. At 8 p.m., we will allow 5-minute presentations intended to facilitate more technical comments A stenographer will be making a transcript of today's comments, so please be sure to identify yourself by stating and spelling your name and speak clearly. Written comments from the public and agencies are encouraged and most welcome and will be considered in the same fashion as oral comments made today. All of the comments received will be summarized and responded to in the final EIS to be issued by the Planning Board after the formal close of the public comment period. SECRA places an emphasis on substantive comments on the content of the DEIS as distinct from general community sentiment about the project. In the SECRA process, expressions of support for or against projects are less important than advising the lead agency what facts or circumstances are leading you to that conclusion. So to be more precise, the more precise you can be about the views on the studies and the analysis in the DEIS, the more helpful that will be in considering your comments. If you have specific suggestions on the mitigation measures outlined in the DEIS or alternatives considered in the DEIS, we ask you to share your thoughts both here today and in any written comments to be submitted on or before March 13th. Once the public comment period closes, the Planning Board will begin the process of preparing the final EIS. The process undertaken by the Planning Board, planning staff, and SECRA consultants, with input from the applicants, entails reading and summarizing all of the public comments received, preparing responses to each substantive comment received, identifying revisions to the DES where warranted, and, if determined necessary, consideration of the need for a supplemental DEIS. The process of completing a final EIS often takes 3 or more months, depending on the number and nature of the public comments received. Once a final EIS is issued, then a SECRA statement of findings will be prepared. A finding statement is a written document prepared following acceptance of a final EIS that declares that all SECRA requirements for making decisions of an action have been met. The finding statement identifies the social and economic as well as environmental considerations that have been weighed in deciding to approve or disapprove an action. Therefore, a decision on a preliminary plat will be made reflecting the SECRA findings as well as other applicable town zoning and planning considerations. Thank you all for attending. I just want to add to that, as the person here who will be running the meeting, that obviously we're here as a community. We're happy to see you here. Your comments are important. This will not be a question and answer session. We can't really give you anything back. We're here to hear your comments, and likewise the applicant is not going to respond tonight. All comments will be fully addressed, as Sam said in his remarks, before this proceeds further. So tonight we're here to hear from you. It's important that we hear from everybody who wants to speak, and we've laid out that process and time limits. It's important so that we're fair to everybody and hear from everybody, that you abide by the time limits. So we have a 3-minute limit right now. I'm going to keep time. I believe there's also going to be time on the screen behind me. I will give you a 30-second warning. I believe you can monitor it on the screen behind. And I just ask that you keep that time limit in mind to be fair to everybody who might speak after you. With that, we have a sign-up sheet. If anybody missed it at the door, feel free to step back out and sign up, because we are going to go right in order of those, and once we finish the in-person speakers, we'll go to calls. With that, our first speaker is John Hall. And please state and spell your name at the mic.
Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed an important step. Notice and jurisdiction is in order?
Yes, the town attorney's office has reviewed the affidavit of service and posting, and it appears to be properly noticed.
And actually, one last step, because we're missing our placards. We're going to sort of take a roll call here. I'm the vice chairman, Ian Calder Piedmont, spelled IANCALDER -PIEDMONTE.
Hello. I'm a member, Randall Parsons, RANDALL PARSONS.
Member Ed Krug, KRUG.
David McMaster, Assistant Town Attorney. I'll be here for the first hour until Nancy Marshall replaces me.
My name is Michael Hansen.
Jody Walker, Planning Board Secretary.
Eric Shantz, Assistant Planning Director of the Planning Department.
And now, John Hall.
Very good. No further introduction necessary. Chairman Kramer, I see you on the screen. I wish you were here in person, but I feel your brooding omnipresence nonetheless. Members of the Planning Board, my name is John Hall. I live at 5 Pearson Lane here in Wainscott. I've submitted a letter to the board concerning an unaddressed impact of the proposal on cyclists. I consider that important, but I'm here today to address a different topic. The DEIS refers to a market analysis identifying the, quote, most demanded and believed to be the most suitable uses for the proposed subdivision. Many, if not most, of these uses, they're summarized on page 129 of the DEIS, would serve small local businesses, landscapers, cabinet makers, and the like, and the service sector, yoga studios, vet clinics, personal storage units for excess furniture, or the extra car that doesn't fit into your garage. The problem that I see is that few, if any, of these kinds of local, relatively light users in need of CI space will be able to afford the purchase or rental of the lots being created by the subdivision. The users who will be able to afford a WCC lot will be larger, more intensive, higher margin users with more capital and much larger footprints in every way than the locals featured in the market analysis. The needs of our local businesses will not be met, and outsiders will dominate with heavier, more intensive uses involving more traffic, greater lot coverage, and more substantial, more adverse impacts on the environment. Warehouses like the pod storage facility down the road might work, but they involve something like 90% lot coverage, interfering with groundwater recharge and producing excess runoff. It would be a perfect place for a FedEx or UPS logistics center. They operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Just picture that. I have done some back-of-the-envelope calculations which support my analysis of the minimum lot prices. I started with the price that Suffolk Cement put on its 50-acre lot, or 50-acre site in Calverton. To cover applicants' acquisition and development costs and produce a reasonable profit, I believe that lots would need to sell for at least $1.25 million, and probably an applicant will probably ask well more than that.
30 seconds. With a 6,800-foot building hypothesized by the DEIS, another $1.5 or $2 million would have to be invested. Site improvements would add additional cost, bringing a total investment before any business started to $3 to $4 million. At these lofty prices, only more intensive uses would make economic sense. Local small businesses their needs for CI space would not be met. And just wrap it up, and please remember that you can submit written comments that will be considered exactly the same.
Thank you. The applicant could covenant to exclude many of the more intrusive uses or reserve lots for uses at affordable prices, but has not done so. Applicant wants to see what the market will bear in the future. He wants to get the best and the highest prices. Who can blame him? Who will stop him?
Okay, I'm going to have to end it there, I think.
The Planning Board does have the power. I trust that you will exercise that power in the interests of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, John Hall. Next speaker is Sarah Davidson.
I'm Sarah Davison, speaking on behalf of the Friends of Georgia Capon Foundation, which is also a member of the Coalition to Stop the Wainscott Commercial Center. I would like to start by thanking all of you for your stamina and diligence in reviewing this very large project. It is an extensive and technical DEIS. Its impacts on the town will be immense, and therefore your careful review and consideration of every aspect of the DEIS and 50-lot subdivision is necessary. It is not an easy job. Georgica Pond is the down-gradient natural drainage basin of the proposed action. Classified by the New York Natural Heritage Program as a coastal salt pond, its rarity is ranked as G4, S1, S2. That means it is globally relatively secure, but on a statewide basis, it is rare. We must take care of it. The pond supports a diverse array of wildlife, including bald eagles, piping plovers, and is one of the most productive areas for blue crabs in Suffolk County. It is a popular water body for kayaking, paddleboarding, and sailing. The pond has several other important designations, included in an area of statewide scenic significance and a locally designated significant coastal fish and wildlife habitat. These are important designations and are intended to elevate environmental review. The Pitt property is located within the Wayne-Scott Water Protection District, within the Suffolk County Department of Health Services Groundwater Management Zone 5, and it is adjacent to a state-designated critical environmental area, CEA, which includes a town aquifer recharge overlay and Suffolk County Special Groundwater Protection Area. SECRA and the scoping document requires that the Planning Board take a more proactive approach to planning and design to conserve CEAs. The applicant states the proposed action will have no impact on the CEA because the groundwater is traveling away from the CEA. But the Alpha Geoscience report shows groundwater does flow through part of the CEA, with the remaining flow directly into Georgica Pond. Using IA systems, which are mandated by the town and county codes for new construction, will increase nitrogen loading to the groundwater. Groundwater quality will be significantly impacted by the minimum 2-foot separation to groundwater that the applicant is showing, despite the request by the Planning Board for a 4-foot separation. Over time, with sea level rise, this 2-foot separation will grow even smaller. The applicant must adequately and thoroughly consider ways to mitigate nitrogen using current science to revise their models and thoroughly evaluate a sewage treatment plant. In closing, the DEIS statements that groundwater and Georgica Pond will not be adversely affected are not substantiated in the DEIS.
Next speaker is Marla Beheman, and pardon me if I pronounce anybody's name wrong. I'll do my best. Marla? Okay, we'll go to the next speaker, Frank Pearson.
Good afternoon. My name is Frank Pearson, F-R-A-N-K-P-E-A-R-S-O-N. I am the Director of Transportation Safety for Greenman Peterson. Our offices are located in Babylon. Prior to working at GPI, I was the New York State DOT Regional Traffic Engineer on Long Island for 11 years. GPI has reviewed the traffic study in the DEIS for the Wayne-Scott Commercial Center on behalf of the Friends of Georgica Pond Foundation. Formal written comments will be submitted. Today I'll summarize our main comments on the traffic study. In the scope for the DEIS under potential transportation impacts, it is noted that the traffic impact study will consider the proposed action's impact on traffic traveling on several roads, including Wayne-Scott Stone Road and residential streets located in neighboring residential neighborhoods to the north and the south. The traffic impact study doesn't address traffic impacts to Wayne-Scott, Stone Road, or other residential streets south of Route 27. In addition, the scope notes that the DIS will also analyze whether the proposed action will degrade existing or proposed pedestrian or bicycle accommodations near the site. There is not sufficient discussion on pedestrian and bicycle accommodations in the report. In the DEIS, it is noted that revisions to the capacity analysis should be performed after the preparation of the final action plan in the FEIS process. while acknowledging that alternatives could change significantly. These updates and alternative analyses should be part of the DEIS so all reviewers have the opportunity to comment on the proposal being progressed rather than reviewing a traffic study that the applicant acknowledges will be revised. In addition, mitigation aspects may require revision and should be subject to review of all interested parties. The traffic counts were collected in August of 2017, over 5 years ago. Traffic patterns have changed since the pandemic, and the estimated volumes may no longer be representative of current conditions. More importantly, the build condition is being analyzed for the year 2021. Standard practice is to use the year of anticipated opening of the site. The report notes that the project will be built in phases over 10 years.
30 seconds.
The build analysis year should reflect the full build-out of the site. This will require updating the build year analysis as well as increasing background traffic growth. It is likely that other mitigation will be required. The applicant recommends that the town or New York State DOT restripe the Wayne-Scott Northwest Road southbound approach to Route 27 to provide an exclusive left turn lane. We are not aware of a commitment by the town or New York State DOT to make this modification, nor has it been established that the turn lane is feasible. Therefore, it should not be an assumed mitigation, and the exclusive left turn lane should not be included in the highway capacity analysis.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to wrap it up.
I'm almost done. As such, the level of service for the eastbound New York 27 approach degrades from level of service D to level of service E. Subsequently, these impacts need to be mitigated. And finally, the proposal is unlikely to be approved by New York State DOT since it will provide a narrow northbound lane that will be difficult for turning trucks to negotiate without encroaching on oncoming traffic. Thank you.
Thank you. And if anybody we call on in this first session, if anybody we call on in this first session feels like they need 5 minutes, please remember that we have time slots allotted at the end. But I do want to be fair for everybody who came tonight and is here today to use their 3 minutes. So if I call your name and you think that you need 5 minutes, please just, I can bump you to the later session and we'll make sure that you have extra time. Bob DeLuca is up next.
See if I can do it. Good afternoon, members of the Planning Board. My name is Bob DeLuca, and I serve as president of Group for the East End. We'll be submitting more detailed comments in writing, but given the limits of time today, I'd like to focus your attention on the underlying value of the DEIS in the context of SECRA and its all-important authority to require substantial environmental mitigation and design alternatives. Now, over the course of the last 38 years, I've reviewed hundreds of environmental impact statements as a government and nonprofit land use practitioner. And time and again, it's inescapably clear that a DEIS on its own is largely a document by a developer to advance the goals of that developer. It's just important to keep that in mind. But that said, we continue to believe in this process because no matter the fog of initial presentation, the identification of critical environmental impacts is eventually almost always assured and subject to the light of public review. And most importantly, the law from which the DEIS proceeds and court decisions that have followed secure a lead agency's right to deny a project that does not sufficiently mitigate environmental harm, choose reasonable development alternatives that balance environmental protection alongside social and economic need, and impose conditions outside of the traditional areas of jurisdiction to mitigate environmental harm. Looking at this expansive development in the context of its inescapable traffic, watershed, community character impacts, and the community character impacts it will produce, makes it absolutely clear the Planning Board must call upon every power granted to it through the environmental review process to assure consideration of a design alternative that is far different from the desired plan. To that end, the development of a preferred alternative with a conservation-oriented outcome, including the meaningful exploration of full or significant preservation, is a must. Only through a dramatic reduction in overall potential development density can the significant and permanent impacts of this proposal ever hope to be sufficiently mitigated. Barring a major agreement on outright or significant preservation, we would ask the Planning Board to revisit the recommendations of the Wayne-Scott Hamlet Plan, which includes significant parkland and open space protection alongside other potential community needs. Any such consideration must obviously prioritize the mitigation of traffic, groundwater protection, wastewater treatment, site restoration, and consideration of future growth in the area alongside adjacent highways. At the end of the day, the CEQA process can result in either a wasteful papering over of critical environmental impacts and community planning issues, or a foundation for a comprehensive, transparent, and forward-looking planning process.
30 seconds.
The decision about which way this review breaks ultimately comes down to the leadership and conviction of this planning board and its staff, and we look to you for that leadership going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, Carolyn Logan Gluck. Please state and spell your name for the record.
Hello, my name is Carolyn Logan Gluck. That's C-A-R-O-L-Y-N. Logan, L-O-G-A-N. Gluck, G-L-U-C-K. Good afternoon, Vice Chairman Calder-Piedmonte, Chairman Kramer, and members of the East Hampton Planning Board. I'm chairperson of the Wayne-Scott CAC, but today I'm addressing you as a Wayne-Scott resident who also represents the Coalition to Stop the Wayne-Scott Commercial Center, a group of local organizations and individuals who have joined together to prevent this 50-lot subdivision. The coalition has particular concerns about potential impacts to traffic and water that have not been addressed sufficiently in its DEIS. This is largely due to the applicant's failure to adhere to the goals and guiding principles put forth in the town's comprehensive plan and the Wayne-Scott Hamlet Plan, which proposes a mix of reasonable uses thoughtfully distributed around the site with over 60% of the land devoted to open space. The proposed action rejects this outright, and the Hamlet Plan alternative fails as well, since it is predicated on the 50-lot subdivision plat, rather than the, quote, conceptual framework in the Hamlet Plan. In the Hamlet Plan alternative, lots for potential parkland, housing, and a train station are simply colored in. The ready-mix cement plant and masonry supply business would continue to operate on site. Impervious surfaces would cover 29 acres, or 42% of the site. There would be stormwater runoff, low nitrogen septic systems allowing wastewater and nitrogen to flow into Georgica Pond, loss of forested areas, and as for traffic, as many as 205 additional trips on Montauk Highway during the afternoon weekday peak hours. Most reprehensible in the Hamlet Plan alternative is the number of parcels tagged for potential parkland, 17 totaling 16.5 acres, a far cry from the approximately 60%, or about 42 acres, recommended in the Hamlet Plan. For decades, the subject property has been dominated by successional oldfield, some 37 acres of meadow, grassland, or brushland, and some 20 acres of additional open, non-vegetated space. To see 48 new commercial or industrial businesses constructed, or in the case of the Hamlet Plan alternative, an additional 27, would not only impose an undue burden on the environment, the roads, and the community, it would result in the loss of a natural, albeit disturbed, resource.
30 seconds.
The scoping document requires the applicant to analyze whether the proposed subdivision of the site will eliminate the potential for this future recreational resource and the impact of any such elimination. Nowhere within the DEIS is there an analysis of the opportunity costs that would be incurred by the development of so much open space. Thus, not only does the applicant fail to take guidance from the Wayne-Scott Hamlet Plan, among other town plans, it fails to consider the opportunity cost of developing so much open space. A 50-lot subdivision will clog our roads, pollute our environment, and diminish the natural wonder of our town. Thank you for taking these comments into consideration.
Thank you. Next speaker, Ken Maxwell. Please state and spell your name for the record.
Good afternoon, and thank you for your time. My name is Ken Maxwell, K-E-N-M-A-X-W-E-L-L. I live here in East Hampton, and I'm here today to speak on behalf of Change Hampton, of which I'm a member of their advisory committee. Our organization's statement on the matter at hand today is as follows, and references have also been included in our letter provided. Given East Hampton's clearly expressed comprehensive plan goal and the laudable priorities established by the Wayne-Scott Hamlet Plan, Change Hampton cannot support the current WCC subdivision proposal before the Planning Board. Our mission at Change Hampton is to preserve, restore, and promote a vibrant, healthy ecology in East Hampton. The current proposal contradicts both Change Hampton's goals and, more to the point, the stated goals of the town of East Hampton. In addition, Resolution 2021-329, the Climate Emergency Resolution, adopted by East Hampton Town, pledges to put the impact on the climate first in its decisions. The adverse environmental impacts of the proposed commercial and industrial subdivision outweigh whatever benefits it might offer. The significant increase in vehicular traffic will increase the already existing congestion in the hamlet. The final DEIS fails to consider the negative consequence of increased particulate matter on the health of both humans and the natural environment. We are familiar with the deleterious health effects of fine particulates on humans. However, we often ignore its impacts on the surface waters we have promised to protect. Much of the nitrogen load on Georgia Pond comes from the atmosphere, according to a town trustee report. Increased traffic will increase the load, negatively impacting efforts to protect and restore the pond from nitrogen-induced algal blooms. Then, there are the lost opportunity costs that the subdivision plan will impose. The current subdivision plan forecloses the substantial benefits of the Hamlet Plan, a decentralized water treatment plant, a mix of affordable housing, commercial industrial buildings, and essential to the environmental health of the area, a parkland green space. Instead, the subdivision proposal will result in extensive soil compaction and impervious surfaces. Together with the building coverage, this means that the soil health of the area will be impaired. And soil health is the keystone to a vital, resilient ecology.
30 seconds.
This means that the system services provided by a complex of ecological systems, carbon sequestration, nitrogen cycle management, filtration and remediation of toxic chemicals, hydrological stabilization of runoff, will be muted or shut down in an area declared a water protection zone by the town of East Hampton. Given these consequences, Change Hampton opposes approval of the current application. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Jane Marion.
Thank you, Chairman. Want me to spell my name and or
yes,
you have?
Please.
Okay.
State and spell.
It's Jaine Mehring, and I live on Ocean Lane in Amagansett. Good. Great. Okay, hit it. As I understand the secret process, Planning Board will need, after the public portion concludes, Planning Board will need to make the decision if the DIS is sufficient to lead to the FEIS. And in particular, if after consideration of the final EIS, if the public need and benefit cannot be shown to outweigh the adverse environmental impacts of the project, then the board must disapprove the action. Based on my study of the DES, I will submit a more detailed letter. But today, because of time constraints, I'll focus only on two DES elements. First, the economic market analysis, and second, the alternatives narrative. I assert both of these foundational parts of the DEIS are deeply flawed. They do not provide the requisite credible analytics to comport with even the most minimum standards of reasonable basis to support their assertions and conclusions legitimately. The entire crux of applicants' justification for needs and benefits of the action seem to be simply that the absolute number of CI parcels in East Hampton is currently small, ergo there must be a huge demand. This is reductive and circular reasoning, one that cannot be viewed as sufficient to provide legitimate justification for the scope and scale of the proposed action, let alone one with as many potential adverse impact. In my view, the benefits of the proposed project and market needs section and the commercial industrial market analysis contain deficiencies that render it inadequate and possibly inaccurate. In particular, the applicant violates a basic standard of supply and demand analysis. They've mismatched the market area they say defines CI supply and the market area they claim represents demand. They look at the number of CI and other commercial parcels confined within the borders of East Hampton. However, they state the demand market extends from the Shinnecock Canal to the tip of Montauk and to points north of South Fork. This means the entire supply inventory must be redone to include all available CI and commercial parcels across the same larger geographic demand area. And that would include Calverton and Riverhead in the CI supply analysis. The second major mismatch flaw in the supply and demand appendix is the misalignment of the time period. The applicant calculates CI supply only as it exists today, but their project, they say, will take years and decades to establish, and therefore that the analysis should also include the 100 acres of sand gravel mine off of Springs Fireplace Road, as well as sand land in Noyak that will come online over that time.
30 seconds.
Looking at the rest of the so-called CI market analysis, as written, it appears to be based on qualitative, unsubstantiated anecdotes, such as one conversation in December 21, 2020, with a few real estate analysts, brokers. This is my last paragraph. Most importantly, this section is wholly deficient because it does not include any actual quantitative economic modeling supporting their assertions of needs and benefits. In my letter, I will delineate what a valid economic model must include, such as quantitative projections, numbers, math, dozens of data items like projected sales, property tax revenues, employment statistics, and scenario analysis. I'll be back this evening for a second pass at it. Thank you.
Next speaker, John Stoner. Please state and spell your name for the record.
John Stoner, J-O-N-S-T-O-N-E-R. Because my letter's long, I will read highlights. I start with a discussion of zoning codes. Vice Chairman and Chairman Kramer and members of the East Hampton Town Planning Board, I'm John Stoner, a 55-year Wainscott resident and a current Sacaponic resident for the past 11 years, the last 3 of which have been full-time. I'm here to speak about the application for the Wainscott Commercial Center. The overarching question for me is how can this suggested largest commercial industrial development in the history of Long Island South Fork be regarded as appropriate for and fair and commensurate with the culture, character, and history of this 6.8 square mile, 375-year-old farming hamlet. The very things that brought our first settlers and now the throngs of tourists and second homeowners who help support our economy on the East End was not and is not an outsized array of industrial services at their disposal, and just down the pike. But instead, it is our wide white beaches and clean air and water and good soil. It is the natural beauty and quietude. It is also the serenity that is afforded by the thoughtful, sane, and safe zoning and building regulations afforded by our town and guaranteed by the laws by which we are governed here. Established in 1648, Wainscott is the smallest of the school district and planning area in East Hampton, both in terms of area, 6.8 miles, and a population of 498. It is and always has been the most agrarian of all East Hampton hamlets, and it remains the singular one still, with more open spaces and fields per acre than all others. Wainscott's founding families are still all represented and thriving in the community, along with others who have been lucky enough to call the hamlet home, given its beauty, unique culture, history, and humble farming and fishing legacy. Crops are still sown and harvested by the Babinski and Dankowski families, and traditions are celebrated annually. Wainscott Chapel, or the 5th public schoolhouse in the hamlet's history, like the Strawberry Festival, the Ice Cream Social, and the Potluck Supper, all well attended by scores of residents, often with standing room only numbers. These events, some well into their 7th and 8th decades, are often hosted by the 154-year-old Wainscott Sewing Society, or promoted by the decades-old Wainscott Citizen Advisory Committee, the longest-running and best-attended monthly advocacy committee in all of East Hampton's separate hamlets. In short, this tiny, close-knit community has a lengthy history of farming and fishing, strong camaraderie, goodwill, fellowship, and mutual support. The incongruity, however, behind this smallest and still rural East Hampton hamlet becoming the new home to the largest commercial industrial park in all of East Hampton, and in fact the entire South Fork of Long Island, is incomparable in my recent memory. Sited 100 yards from Georgia Pond and directly along the worst, most congested stretch of Montauk Highway in all Suffolk County. Add to that picture the phenomena that happens every year and peaks in July and August.
Thank you. I'm going to have to ask you to wrap it up.
Significant numbers of residents and summer visitors alike who know how to ignore congestion to avoid the traffic nightmare. So imagine the 25% of impatient and late drivers forced deep into the heart of residential and historic district of the hamlet. As 150 new cars a day discover Wainscott, it will immediately begin to change.
Thank you. And your written comments will be considered in full. And a reminder, it is important for us to hear from everybody, and our chairman set up, longer time periods later. So if anybody feels that they need it, I want to encourage you to wait until the afternoon or the evening session. The next speaker is Chris Gobler.
Hi, Chris Gobler, Stony Brook University, CHRISGOBLER. I'm going to talk about the impact of this project on Georgia Pond. I've been studying Georgia Pond for a decade, and it's an incredible resource to the town, both recreationally, and as Sarah Davison mentioned, it's the most robust blue crab fishery on the South Fork. However, it's been under siege because of development in the region, and specifically in the last decade, it's experienced toxic blue-green algae blooms with toxins that are a serious human health threat and resulted in the death of a dog on Georgia Pond. These blooms get so intense that they suck all of the oxygen out of Georgia Pond and have resulted in massive fish kills as well. And this has been a repeated occurrence over the last decade. I've been researching Georgia Pond during the last decade, and I've been able to prove in my lab group definitively that the cause of these events is excessive loading of nitrogen from land to sea. And we've also further demonstrated that any increase in the amount of nitrogen going into Georgia Pond is likely to exacerbate these results, make these toxic blooms more toxic, more intense, and therefore have a cascading effect on the entire ecosystem, both the flora and the fauna. It's for that reason that a decade ago I proposed that the levels of nitrogen going into Georgia Pond need to be reduced by 60%. In 2020, Suffolk County completed their sub-watershed study and came to the same exact conclusion. They looked very carefully at the entire county, 200 water bodies, and for Georgia Pond said nitrogen levels must be reduced by 60% to improve the health of this water body. In light of that, the Friends of Georgia Pond, as well as the town of East Hampton, have taken extraordinary measures to reduce the amount of nitrogen going to Georgia Pond, harvesting hundreds of thousands of pounds of seaweed and macrophytes out of Georgia Pond every year, upgrading dozens of septic systems, more systems upgraded in this ecosystem than anywhere else, and many other remedial measures. Now, despite all of that, the project that's being proposed is going to significantly increase the nitrogen load from this property into Georgia Pond by hundreds of pounds per year. And I'll be putting in my letter pointing out how the DEIS gets it completely wrong when it comes to nitrogen loading to the pond. They're using incorrect assumptions and come out with their in the DEIS stating there'll be no nitrogen load to Georgia Pond. They're clearly ignoring all the science that's been done in Suffolk County and on Long Island and New York during the past decade.
30 seconds.
And so instead of reducing the nitrogen loads, which have been required by Suffolk County and been implored by myself and the Friends of Georgia Pond, counter to all the actions that have been taken in Georgia Pond during the past decade, this project will be increasing nitrogen loads from land right to Georgia Pond. It's 500 feet away, and the travel time of groundwater from this area into Georgia Pond is less than 2 years for the entire property. And so what we can expect from this project, therefore, is increased nitrogen loading, more toxic algal blooms, increased number of fish kills, and an increased threat to human health.
Next speaker, Barbara D'Andrea. Please state and spell your name for the record.
Good afternoon. My name is Barbara Wilson D'Andrea, B-A-R-B-A-R-A, W-I-L-S-O-N, D''Andrea. And I would like to address you on behalf of the Wainscott Tree Society, an organization affiliated with the Wainscott Sewing Society. The Wainscott Tree Society is a not-for-profit organization formed in 2021 dedicated to maintaining and enhancing the tree-lined streets throughout Wainscott with consideration to the hamlet's open and woodland vistas, town-owned rights-of-way and hamlet plan goals, and to advocate for policy change to support these goals. The Tree Society has concerns about potential impacts to trees that would be brought about by the proposed Wainscott Commercial Center. We believe the applicant has not sufficiently addressed these in its draft environmental impact statement. According to the report, there are at present 9.2 plus or minus acres of woodland along the periphery of the property. In the proposed action, which would retain the 2 current businesses and create 48 new parcels zoned for commercial and industrial use, the trees to the east, what few remain, and west would be retained, but the trees to the north might be partially or wholly cleared, thereby reducing the wooded areas to 7.6 plus or minus acres. In the hamlet plan alternative, trees would be eliminated even more radically. The few remaining trees along the eastern property boundary of 2.5 plus or minus acres would be removed in their entirety, and that proportion of the property redeveloped for commercial or industrial use. This would leave neighboring residents completely exposed with no buffers for noise, dust, or other emissions. Furthermore, trees along the southwest boundary would be reduced in number to accommodate 27 future small service commercial, wholesale, and warehouse businesses. The trees bordering the former sand mine have immense value. They mitigate impacts from the Long Island Railroad to the north. They reduce the visual impact of structures on the site. They buffer neighboring properties, screening activities and reducing the spread of noise and dust generated at the site. They also stabilize the steeply pitched slopes of the site and add to the community character, situated as it is in a largely wooded part of Wainscott. Many, if not most of the trees were planted perhaps as much as 40 years ago. This was a requirement of the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation in the reclamation of the sand pit. The slopes contain many mature pine and oak trees and a small transition area between the pitch pine oak forest and the successional old field has pitch pine saplings and birch pines. So finally, the Wainscott Tree Society appreciates the applicants adding street trees to the proposed action. However, they need to identify what species of trees they proposed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And actually, I'm going to ask if we could hold our applause. You know, we really are here to hear your comments. I want to make sure that we keep that our focus. I understand there's strong opinions about the application, but if we could hold the applause and just focus on the speakers. Next speaker is Courtney Garneau. Please state and spell your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Courtney Garneau, Courtneygarneau. I'm a volunteer for the Eastern Long Island chapter of Surfrider Foundation and a concerned member of our community. Surfrider's Blue Water Task Force has been testing Georgica Pond at 4 sites for nearly 10 years. Many of the sites show elevated bacteria levels, especially at the north end of the pond after rain due to impacts of runoff. The proposed Wainscott Commercial Center development is 200 yards from Georgica Pond. This development will increase the amount of impermeable surfaces in the watershed that generate runoff and send it through a watershed that is already experiencing degraded water quality conditions. Also concerning is increased industrial and commercial use of this site will add more pollution to compromised groundwater, which quickly flows into Georgia Pond and out to the Atlantic Ocean. The aquifer, pond, and wetlands are important to sustaining the ecological well-being of the area. This exploitation is to the detriment of future generations. Every single person in this room will be affected. My children are first-generation East Enders. They have friends and teachers who are fifth and sixth generation East Enders. I would like to hope that they all will be able to return and raise the next generation with clean drinking water and open spaces. There needs to be a shift in the mindset. There can no longer be undeniable cheerleading for industrial and residential development over our water supply. We cannot become Levittown.
Next speaker, Keith Gree. It looks like that might be crossed off, so I'm not sure if there's an intention to speak there. If not, we'll go to the next person. Christina Buckley. Please state and spell your name for the record.
Hi, Christina Buckley, Christina Buckley. I'm a resident of East Hampton, and I have just a brief statement. I think many people in this community feel that the area is at a breaking point. You could say it is a critical time in terms of traffic, capacity, and the effects on the environment. With all that is known about climate change, now is absolutely not the time to take a huge parcel of available land and turn it into an industrial wasteland of pollution, congestion, and disruption, all for the stated purpose of serving the second homeowner industry and economy. We are at a breaking point, a turning point, a crossroads. Residents have made it clear that what is important to them is to protect and nurture a balanced quality of life for today and for future generations. This means building affordable housing, protecting the natural resources that surround us, and to reduce noise, pollution, and traffic. This crossroads is an opportunity to use this property to better serve the community. The fundamental question here is, does the public need for this proposed project outweigh the concerns of our residents and the impact that it would have on them and the environment? The answer is a resounding no.
Thank you. And again, I'm going to have to ask to hold your applause. Next speaker is Carol Slater. Please state and spell your name for the record.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Carol, C-A-R-O-L-E, Slater, S-L-A-T-E-R. I have been involved in the area of land use and planning for over 50 years. I've been an owner of property at 5 Whitney Lane in Wainscott for 50 years. And I've been a full-time resident of the town of East Hampton for a long time. I think you've heard the testimony of Carol Logan Gluck, John Stoner today, Professor Gobler, Sarah Davidson, Jane Mirren, Ms. Buckley. I think they've said it all. This is a bad project. It will have an irreversible, adverse, significant impact on the entire east end of Long Island. A number of you know that I am a lawyer in New York. I have specialized in land use and zoning law and construction permitting, previously having been had a general counsel to the Department of Buildings in New York, general counsel to the Zoning Board of New York. I am very active in the bar associations, both nationally and locally. I've worked with the Commissioner of Housing prior to law school, working on development of plans and projects, and appeared before groups such as yourself seeking those approvals. I have read through the DEIS. I will be very brief in my comments. I think that the proposed project will result in a significant adverse impact on the environment and this community, which is irreversible. The significant impact under the meaning of law, which will put what I consider, quote, a nail in the coffin to the very fragile environment of Wainscott, East Hampton, Sagaponack, and Bridgehampton. There'll be no turning back if this site is developed.
Keep going, you're awesome.
Anyone hear me? There'll be no turning back if this project is approved at this point. I think it's a bad plan, a bad project, and I think there are such incredibly creative people who live in this community. Designers, architects, landscape people, surf riders, environmentalists, people who have developed incredible projects all over the world could come up with a much better plan than that which is proposed before you. Thank you for the time, and thank you for the ability to put my written comments in. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Kate Muth.
Hi, I'm Kate Muth, speaking on behalf
Please
of
state and spell your name for the record.
Gail Pellet. My name is Kate, K-A-T-E, Muth, M-U-E-T-H, speaking for, don't start me yet, for Gail Pellet, G-A-I-L-P-E-L-L-E-T. East Hampton government and residents are facing a decision on the largest industrial subdivision project on the South Fork, which is more than twice the size of the Bridgehampton Commons. This lies over top of our sole source aquifer, our water recharge area for all of East Hampton's drinking water. The property also reaches close to the airport, a designated Superfund site contaminated with PFAS from fire retardant use at the airport. PFAS were found in test wells under the WCC site by a hydrology survey evaluating the proposal. This sole source aquifer already has steadily rising nitrogen content. Suffolk County water ranks among the highest for public drinking water nitrate levels. The potential for unsafe levels of nitrogen from 50 septic systems over top of our aquifer, even if they are the mandated new septic systems leaching minimal nitrogen, when added to an unknown array of chemicals and industrial pollutants, its public health and environmental hazard impact is profound. The horizontal movement of underground water on the site moves from the northeast corner near the airport to the southwest corner of 27 and beyond to the vulnerable and fragile waterway of Georgia Pond. Bays and creeks are already suffering high levels of nitrogen, causing algae blooms with consequent effects on marine life. Major impact comes in the form of significantly increased traffic. One study determines there could be 300 round trips of trucks, vans, and cars entering and exiting the site from 27 in peak hours. 20% of traffic is proposed to exit 114, then through Sag Harbor. Beyond pollution and congestion, impact on passage for emergency vehicles can create ever-increasing life-threatening situations. The developers propose they'll build and pave some 75% of the property while planting rain gardens for water runoff. We need to think through the consequences of adding impervious sealed surfaces to some 50-plus acres, because in rainstorms producing heavy rainoff, these rain gardens cannot absorb the chemical flow from the paved surfaces.
30 seconds.
We need to imagine what can be built here instead, what can be developed. The town's resolution and commitment to mitigate the climate emergency as a first consideration in decision-making processes. We should be focused on remedial and restorative landscaping. Plant keystone native trees, grasses, and plants that will do the hard ecosystem work above and below ground that we need to protect our watershed and drinking water. We need to nurture our disappearing birds and insects that our food supply depends on. Thank you. This is from Gail Pellet.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Richard Brockman. And please state and spell your name for the record.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Richard Brockman, B-R-O-C-K-M-A-N. I'm a resident of East Hampton. My parents came here in 1958, and they brought me with them. So I've known this part of the world for 65 years, which, being as I can still consider myself in my early 30s, that's quite an accomplishment. And I'm going to be speaking somewhat generally. I'm speaking for myself, and I apologize for that in advance. Whenever there's a proposal brought before a planning board for real estate development, usually one of the arguments the developer makes is that there'll be tremendous job creation. I don't doubt that there will be significant job creation by this project. I just think there should be a question asked of any developer when they present the idea of job creation of, will there be a significant cost to the community by this job creation? Will there be significant cost to the environment by this job creation? Will there be a significant cost to the water supply by the job creation? And will there be significant diminution of the beauty of the landscape by this job creation? And if the developer can't answer honestly those questions, pretty much in the negative, then I think the planning board should turn down their request. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Peter Topping. Please state and spell your name for the record.
Yep. My name is Peter Topping, P-E-T-E-R. Topping, T-O-P-P-I-N-G. Good afternoon. My name is Peter Topping. I'm the Executive Director and Baykeeper of Peconic Baykeeper, a local environmental organization dedicated to the protection of our bays and aquatic ecosystems. I'm here today to hopefully prevent any further unnecessary degradation to the watershed of Georgica Pond. As discussed earlier, Georgica Pond is a coastal salt pond with myriad water quality issues. These include toxic cyanobacteria blooms, macroalgae blooms, macrophyte blooms, and dissolved oxygen levels that often fail to meet the threshold to support aquatic life. These impairments can all be linked directly to eutrophication from nitrogen and other nutrients. Although degraded, the current property poses little to no threat to the Georgica Pond watershed, and there's ample opportunity for restoration that could ultimately create a net benefit. The DEIS lists the groundwater travel times at 4.25 to 9 years, with 6.6 years on average. When looking at the Suffolk County watershed sub-watersheds plan maps, the reality is a lot of these groundwater travel times are actually under 2 years for a good part of the project site. Current nitrogen loading for the property, estimated in the DEIS by the SONIR model on page 94, says it'll be about 801.59 pounds per year, with rain gardens removing 369.47 pounds of this. Rain gardens aren't removing the wastewater effluent, so I don't know where all this extra nitrogen removal is actually coming from. It also goes on to state that the long travel times will allow the natural denitrification process to take place. 0 to 2 years is not a long travel time, and Dr. Gobler will probably suggest that there is actually little to no denitrification that's going on once that treated wastewater effluent is in our groundwater. On-site IA wastewater systems are critical for improving our wastewater problems on the east end. Residential systems often treat to pretty low levels. Commercial systems don't have regular household flushing like bathwater and washing dishes, which so may actually have higher numbers.
Seconds.
Okay. So these lower standards, around 10 milligrams, may actually be much lower than what we'd actually see. In conclusion, you cannot reduce a nutrient or pollution load by adding a pollution load. You can treat it before you pollute it, but you cannot reduce it by adding it. So I would just urge the planning board to take a really intense look at this proposal, weigh the consequences to the Georgia Capon watershed, and hopefully make the right call and work to restore this property. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just one more reminder to everybody to submit written comments, even if you've spoken today, because those will all be considered the same. Next speaker, Deborah Quincy Egginton. Please state and spell your name for the record.
I think my husband should go first because we wrote the letters intending to follow. Is that okay?
Is that Hersey Egginton? No problem.
Chairman Kramer and members of the Planning Board, my name is Hersey Egginton, Hersey Eggington. My wife, Deborah, and I have resided at 15 Hedges Lane since 1978. When we purchased our property, our backdoor neighbor was Rose DeGate, whose family operated the sand and gravel operation in what we considered to be a reasonable scale. Now, under different ownership, the site is the subject of an application to the Planning Board for approval to develop the infrastructure for 50 one-acre commercial industrial lots on the 70-acre site. Our first child, a daughter, was born in 1980, and when she was in her second year of college, she was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Her treatment included the removal of her thymus gland and subsequent chemotherapy. While her cancer is in remission, the recent COVID-19 pandemic was a major threat to her, as the thymus is an important part of an adult's immune system and the body's response to a viral threat. As you know, Wainscott's groundwater was deemed unsafe to drink within the last 5 years, and the town appropriated sufficient funds to provide water mains with Suffolk County Water Authority water to all Wainscott residents. We had previously had our well water tested and found high levels of PFOAs and PFOSs. We concluded that our daughter's cancer likely stemmed from the Hedges Lane well water she ingested as an infant and as a child. Now, the town is considering the merits of the application for 50 separate businesses that will generate wastewater and effluent into the ground. The DEIS recently accepted by the Planning Board included a sampling of test borings to demonstrate that the groundwater at those locations is acceptable according to the New York State Department of Environmental Protection standards. We feel that this sampling is an insufficient safeguard against threats to public health and safety. Arguably, all 50 lots on the proposed development should be tested and the results made public. In addition, 75% of the proposed development will be buildings or impervious paved surfaces that will generate significant runoff with associated pollutants into the ground and subsequently into the already environmentally threatened Georgia Pond. For these reasons and others articulated by other speakers, I urge the Planning Board to deny the current application and to request additional alternatives before any resubmission is considered. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Deborah Quincy Egginton.
Hello, Deborah, D-E-B-O-R-A-H, Quincy, Q-U-I-N-C-Y, Egginton, E-G-G-I-N-T-O-N. My name is Deborah Quincy Egginton. I live with my husband, Hersey Egginton, at 15 Hedges Lane in Wainscott. Our property, acquired in 1978, borders the eastern boundary of the Wainscott Commercial Center. I object to the Wainscott Commercial Center's proposed 51-acre lot development on the grounds that the commercial vehicles transition to and from the acquired lots will unnecessarily pollute the air. There is a serious chance that the commercial vehicles and the local residents' vehicles will end up idling due to the increased traffic volume, producing microscopic particulate matter and nitrous dioxide, all damaging to the human lung, especially for those with asthma, lung disease, heart disease, and women who are pregnant. Local residents, myself included, may pay a serious health price for the increased existing traffic, which is inimical to the public's safe health, safety, and welfare. Further, I draw your attention to the applicant's proposed plat and the fact that the property buffer, designated buffer number 3, section 1, running along a portion of the eastern boundary of the commercial site stops at the northern corner of our property. The existing Southampton brick and tile yard backs directly onto our property, as well as to 2 residential neighbors to the south of us. This oversight needs to be addressed. For these reasons, I urge you to deny the applicant's proposal and to require additional alternative plans prior to any resubmission. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, Lori Ann, I believe it's Cargill, although I might be reading that wrong. Hopefully there's only one Lori Ann in the audience. Okay, we'll come back. Next speaker, Anna Chapman. And by the way, if I call somebody's name, there have been a couple people who haven't spoken. At the end of this, we'll come back through the list in case they just stepped out for a moment. Please state and spell your name for the record.
Anna Chapman, A-N-N-A-C-H-A-P-M-A-N. Hi, Mr. Kramer and the members of the Planning Board. I'm actually going to just speak very quickly because I think everybody here has already covered every point I had to make, so, and a lot more eloquently than I could. So it's just really going to state the obvious and how I feel about this development. I'm at 291 Montauk Highway, and you know, the obvious issues of traffic. We can't pull out of our driveway in Montauk Highway, as everybody knows, is just overwhelmed in its capacity, and this is just going to make it that much worse. I can't even bike with my kids to the beach because now all of the side roads are filled with people like driving like bats out of hell to circumvent Montauk Highway. And you know, in addition, all of the work that we've done to try and reverse some of the environmental damage you know, that's been accumulating due to the overdevelopment. It's just, you know, the idea of backing out of that and doing something that will only make it worse is really frustrating. So anyway, I mean, I think everybody who's spoken obviously thinks that this is just a really bad idea. I don't know how much control we have of what other possibilities there are for this space, but I think it would just be a really big mistake not to take whatever opportunity we have here to ask ourselves as a community, what do we really need, what would we like to be there, and work as hard as possible to redirect this space into one that is environmentally friendly, aesthetically pleasing, and community-minded. So my urge is for us not to squander that opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Howard Fine. And please state and spell your name for the record.
Good afternoon. I'm Howard Fine, F-I-N-E. I'm on the board of the East Hampton Trails Preservation Society, and I'm here to read into the record a letter from our president. Dear Chairperson Kramer and members of the Planning Board, this correspondence from the East Hampton Trail Preservation Society, EHTPS for short, represents the position of our Board of Directors on behalf of more than 500 member households. EHTPS is dedicated to the establishment, protection, maintenance, and enjoyment of trails, paths, and natural lands in the town of East Hampton and throughout New York State. Hence, EHTPS is opposed to the massive development plan of the Wainscott Commercial Center as proposed. We feel it may result in the loss of any future recreational resource and the elimination of further open space. Any possibility of an east-west trail on the property's northern end connecting to our Wainscott to Sag Harbor Trail is eliminated. Sadly, though, there is a theme that seems all too recurring in our beloved East Hampton. Is this who we are, or perhaps worse, what we are becoming as a community? Turning our back on our history, our heritage, our rich sense of place, to embrace a future that abandons the very values that have made East Hampton the uniquely treasured location it is. Thank you for your consideration. Sincerely, Irwin T. Levy, President, East Hampton Trails Preservation Society.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Julie Burmeister. And please state and spell your name for the record.
Julie Burmeister, Julieburmeister. I'm a member of the Bridgehampton Civic Association, and my comments are repetitive of what you've heard today, but it's from a person standing on Montauk Highway waiting for the Hampton Jitney. The application to build this massive commercial industrial center is the result of East End's unbridled development, but it is not only a problem for Wainscott and East Hampton, it is a regional problem, increasing traffic and its pollution from west to east. There are three major threats. One, the pollution of heavy-duty trucks. Two, the increasing number of vehicles of all sizes. And three, the maintenance of our roads. Now, picture me standing by Montauk Highway, and what do I see? Trailer tractor trucks hauling gigantic machinery, or fossil fuel trucks, especially those carrying airport fuel, or the container trucks transporting demolition materials, or the elongated construction delivery trucks, or the tank-like cement trucks. Many of these heavy-duty trucks are burning diesel fuel, which emit greenhouse gases like CO2 and toxic nitrogen oxides, which in turn form smog and soot. Just recently, in December 2022, the EPA issued new guidelines for heavy-duty trucks, but beginning in 2027. But time and technology are not on our side. Nitrogen oxide emissions were issued by the EPA, but they will only reduce emissions by 50% in 2045. For greenhouse gas emissions, present standards were updated, but the new ones will be issued in 2030. Number two, at the present time when our single major road congestion is almost saturated, what roads do cars and service vehicles choose to travel? Well, we know the answer to that. Our back roads have become our main roads. Now, imagine what the driving conditions would be like when we add 70 acres of commercial industrial development. Number three, what about the condition of our roads? I find myself steering to avoid potholes. And who pays for the resurfacing of our roads? We do. Do we really want to invite more of the same? I repeat, this application is a regional problem, not only a local problem. The Wainscott Commercial Center can be compared to building a habitat that invites bees. But these bees pollute our air and water. They destroy our roads and raise our taxes, and they cause congestion and accidents. Their honey will not be sweet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Lynn Cronin. And if everyone's tired of hearing me asking to state and spell your name, I will stop, but please do it or I'll get in trouble.
Lynn Cronin, LynnCronin, and I am simply a resident of Wainscott. Though I want to be sure my comments are considered substantive in the context of this review, which as I understand it, considers the impact of the commercial center proposal on the health, safety, and quality and life of town residents. Well, there are so many areas that I could remark on, such as groundwater and environmental effects. I'm going to let others who are more qualified handle those. But as a 40-year resident of Wainscott, there are two areas I am certain I am qualified to comment on. They are the safety impact of this proposal and the consistency with community character. With respect to safety, the quantity, and in particular, as my previous speaker noted, the quality of the traffic that this proposal would generate is a horrific safety risk to our community, given how we live here. It's not just the noise and air pollution and the traffic inconvenience. It is a life-endangering safety risk. Consider these points. Residents of Waynescott need to go to the post office on Montauk Highway to pick up our mail. It's not delivered to us. We walk there with our children, and in my case, with our grandchildren. We push baby strollers there. I am an actuary by profession and know that you are dramatically increasing the odds of a dangerous occurrence when you increase the volume of traffic, especially commercial traffic, in an area that needs to be visited regularly by its residents. Another safety issue concerns the fact that the East Hampton Town Police Department is located just down the road at the intersection of Northwest Waynescott Road and Industrial Road. You are kidding yourself if you think that the traffic we are talking about will not impede the police from getting where they need to be in a timely manner. The safety of all the residents of East Hampton Town would be at risk. The second area I feel qualified to speak about, the second area I feel qualified to speak about is the consistency, or rather the inconsistency, of this proposal with our community character.
30 seconds.
We are a small, quiet, neighborly hamlet. We run into each other regularly at the post office and the farm stand. We have ice cream socials. We are not an industrial center. We are beautiful and rural, not ugly and commercial. Please, in closing, please, please, please do not take lightly the great efforts our Waynescott community put into our original Hamlet study. Do not ignore the character and heritage of Waynescott by adopting this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Reed Super.
Good afternoon. Reed Super, R-E-E-D, S-U-P-E-R. I'm an environmental lawyer speaking on behalf of Friends of Georgia Pond Foundation. I'll be submitting detailed written comments, but in my few minutes today, I want to briefly make 7 points. First, regarding the magnitude of the proposed project, 50 acres, 50 lots on 70 acres, it is more than 3 times the size of the entire existing Waynescott Business District and would have an enormous impact on Waynescott, which does not have the infrastructure to accommodate it. Second, it is in a very sensitive location, close to Georgia Pond, and at the western gateway to the town, where traffic is already at unacceptable levels during many times of year. Third, the applicant's DEIS needs substantial revision and/or supplementation before the board, as lead agency, can complete the FEIS that it is now responsible for. Many sections of the DEIS do not comply with the final scope, despite the document having been put out for public review. And sections that generally follow the scope fail to provide the analysis that this board will need in order to evaluate the proposed project and the mitigation measures identified to date, compare alternatives, and prepare secret findings. Fourth, of the 11 categories of adverse environmental impacts that this board determined in the EAF and in the final scope are potentially significant, the applicant's DEIS recommends that the board now find that all of them are insignificant. Such conclusions are not supported by the underlying facts and analysis and are frankly absurd. As just 2 examples, the commercial center would significantly affect water quality by adding hundreds of pounds of nitrogen annually, plus other pollutants, to Georgia Pond, which is a significant coastal fish and wildlife habitat, and which has been determined by Suffolk County and Professor Gobler to need a 60% reduction in nitrogen loading. And the project is most certainly not consistent with community plans, such as the town's Hamlet plan for Waynescott. Fifth, there is no overriding public need for or public benefit from the project, which is an important aspect of your secret findings. Sixth, The DEIS's alternative analysis does not contain a level of detail sufficient to permit a comparative assessment as required. I know.
30 seconds.
And the Hamlet Plan alternative is incompatible with the Hamlet Plan itself. I know the applicant says that it will offer lots for sale to the town, but to implement the Hamlet Plan, the alternative has to reflect the plan that the town developed and adopted. It does not. Finally, based on the EIS as it stands now, the only decision the board could make is a negative finding statement and disapproval of the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Pamela Mahoney.
My name is Pamela, P-A-M-E-L-A, Mahoney, M-A-H-O-N-E-Y. I'd like to address you on behalf of the Board of Directors for the Wainscott Heritage Project, which is an incorporated not-for-profit organization formed in 22, dedicated to preserving the historic character of Wainscott, protecting its historic structures, and its significant view sheds and encouraging programs that foster an appreciation for the hamlet's traditions and sense of community. WHP is gravely concerned about some potential impacts to the community that may be brought about by the proposed Wainscott Commercial Center. We believe the applicant has not sufficiently addressed these in its DEIS. The DEIS considers community character against the backdrop of land use and zoning. It describes the 70.51 acre property as it's used today, 3.72 acres of roads, buildings, and other paved or impervious surfaces, 9.2 acres of forest, 37 acres that are meadow, grassland, or brushland, and 20.54 acres that are non-vegetated, bare rock, earth, or fill. It also specifies how the land around the site of the proposed action is used. East Hampton Town Industrial Park and airport across from the LIRR tracks to the north, the residential areas and woodlands to the east and west, and the central business district along the Montauk Highway to the southeast. As required in the scope, the DEIS addresses visual impacts, what structures serving the Suffolk Cement Ready Mix and Southampton Tile businesses can be seen from which adjacent roads, as well as noise, odors, and light, and how these might be mitigated. However, the applicant does not fully address consistency with the predominant architectural scale and character of the community surrounding the site. While the proposed action may be consistent with the types of businesses and structures found to the north on Industrial Road, it would enable business construction completely out of keeping in mass and scale with the surrounding residences and small commercial businesses. Wainscott was established in 1648 as a farming community close to the ocean. Woodland to the north provided the needed source of timber and other natural resources. As described in Alice Osborne Henn's Wainscott Dumplings, a memoir of life in Wainscott around the turn of the 20th century, virgin forests of pine, oak, stretching northward to the bay, ensured an ample supply of timber for building and wood to keep their fires burning. In the woods were blueberries and huckleberries. Along the meadows, blackberries could be found. The settlers know of no other locality which furnished the necessities of life in such variety and abundance. Still, this legacy can be seen and felt in spite of modern incursions over the centuries. The extension of the Long Island Railroad, the expansion of the road extending between Bridgehampton and East Hampton into what is now the Montauk Highway, the construction of an airport, and the sand and gravel mine in the late 1940s.
30 seconds.
The zoning codes do not automatically preserve community character. The DEIS needs to more fully address consistency with the predominant architectural scale and character of the communities surrounding the site. Consistency cannot be achieved with the proposed action unless massive alternatives should be explored much more thoroughly. Wainscott Heritage Project hopes the Planning Board will give these comments full and due consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Michael Mahoney.
My name is Michael Mahoney, M-I-C-H-A-L-M-A-H-O-N-E-Y. I live on Beach Lane, Waynescott. And I welcome the opportunity to address you all. However, what has been said here already tonight should be more than enough for this board to know that this Waynescott community, or whatever center you want to call it, WCC, is not welcomed here. It's not welcomed here because of the environmental harm you're going to do to us. It's not welcomed here because of the increase in traffic. The 27, no matter which way you're going, is a parking lot most of the summer. Even in the wintertime, it has gotten significantly crowded. It impacts the people out in Montauk, in Magansett, Hampton, Waynescott. I sincerely hope that you will deny this and do what has been stated that was supposed to happen with the open space. There's no reason we need a commercial development here. We're used to traveling a short distance for whatever our needs may be. One thing that hasn't been clarified that's been mentioned here is the contamination of the PFAS out there is significant. And the town hid that from us publicly. We were drinking contaminated water and bathing in contaminated water for over a year while the town tried to figure out who it was going to blame. It's time that the town take ownership for things. Waynescott is Waynescott. We want to be left alone. We want to be protected. We don't want things forced on us. The PFA standards that are currently being referred to and used date back to the 1960s for the New York State, which got them from the federal government. Other countries, Great Britain, Germany, France, all have much lower PFA standards. Some states have already lowered the PFA standards on their own, superseding the federal government. New York has held out, and I can submit to you that part of that reason is that South Fork wind farm. That route that they chose, running it up our street, in contaminated soil. They never told the workers that they were in contaminated soil. I told them that.
30 seconds.
And then they were dismissed. They were told not to pay any attention to me, and that's fine. They had alternatives that were available. The environmental impact to our marine community, our fishing community, the town doesn't care anymore. This town is interested in one thing, taxes and money. And we're not interested in that. We're interested in a community of people that enjoy the splendor and the environment that we have. I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Lorraine Bolger.
She had to leave.
Okay, next speaker, Barry Rayback. For anybody who has to leave and might want to come back, remember we'll be reconvening. We'll be breaking at 5:30 and reconvening at 6:30. So there'll be another opportunity. And of course, written comments will be accepted until March 13th.
Well, I'm Barry Raybeck, B-A-R-R-Y-R-A-E-B-E-C-K. Please know that I'm not an expert planner and may not be aware of certain details. However, I am an expert citizen of this community. I've been a member of, or founding member of, half a dozen environmental groups on the South Fork. I first publicly addressed the issue of environmental preservation versus reckless and dangerous development in the 1970s and 80s. I've got a photograph in my scrapbook to prove it. A basic understanding of the town comprehensive plan, our zoning laws, and more recently the Waynescott Hamlet study demonstrates that the draft proposal before you is severely flawed. Quite simply, the clear and substantial negative impacts in all but one of the 11 DEIS categories outweigh whatever positive impact there may be. And that is entirely financial and primarily for the benefit of the owners of the land. One could surely argue that any time saved by business people docking at the pit will be lost by anyone not docking there due to the huge increase in traffic delays. The resultant dramatic increase in air pollution is surely being accounted for, yes? The named categories in a DEIS study are the following: land, surface water, groundwater, open space and recreation, critical environmental areas, human health, transportation, traffic, energy resources, noise, odor, and light, consistency with community plans, and consistency with community character. This proposal is clearly unfavorable, if not downright destructive, in every one of these categories. It is surprising, even alarming, that the proposal before us is even under consideration. It is stated in the code that the public has the right to ask, is the action chosen the one that minimizes or avoids environmental impact to the maximum extent practicable? Well, the public is asking.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Gloria Frazzi. I hope I'm not saying that too wrong.
Very close. Gloria Frazee rhymes with Daisy.
I was going to say that.
From East Hampton and a co-founder of the East End chapter of Rewild, Long Island.
Can you spell that for me?
Rewild, Long Island?
No, your name, please.
F-R-A-Z as in zebra, E-E. Gloria, I think, comes from the song or something. Okay, deep breath. This is a charged topic, and I see you all have bottled water, so let's pause and take a sip. I'm the only one who's a little anxious here. Okay. To paraphrase Dr. Gobler, Long Island is one big aquifer, and we depend on our waters for drinking and bathing and farming and fishing and a zillion other uses. Unfortunately, we don't have an island-wide aquifer protection. But some of our waters are so obviously valuable that we have mapped water protection districts where household, commercial, and industrial activities are strictly constrained. Georgica Pond and its watershed is one of these few protected areas because it is so important to the health of our families, flora, and fauna. The proposed Wainscott Commercial Center is fully within Georgica Pond's water protection district. This means that all the surface and groundwater from this development drain into Georgica Pond and end up in the Atlantic Ocean, right by our world-famous beaches. The pond is already under threat from septic systems and stormwater runoff, as well as fertilizers and other chemicals. Let's consider septic. We've already heard 50 additional septic systems. That's a lot of poop. When it comes to runoff, the proposed structures, access roads, and parking lots would add some 30 acres of impermeable surface. That makes for a lot of runoff, which carries fertilizers and pesticides, road chemicals and cleaning chemicals, spilled fuel, commercial solvents, and other industrial wastes. This pollution would be added far into the future, far beyond the decade of heavy construction. Is anyone up for a swim in these conditions? Maybe some fresh-caught local fish? Moving forward with the Wainscott Commercial Center is the opposite of what we need to do to protect Georgica and the priceless natural resources that draw people to the Hamptons. In fact, it's the perfect way to kill the golden goose. Under normal circumstances, I'd pair Pinot Noir with goose. But today, given today's topic, I think water is the way to go.
20 seconds?
Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next speaker, Deborah Foster.
Oh, thank you. It's for you. Can I borrow it?
Sure.
I just got out of the hospital, so, and my fracture is mending. This is perfect. I thought, wow, summer rain for me to be able This isn't my tone, right?
That's it's all good.
Okay.
Don't worry about it.
I'm serious about that. It's walking away. Okay. I can do this.
Sure.
Yeah.
Tell me when it's all right.
Yeah, it's good. Thanks. Deborah Foster, D-E-B-R-A, Foster. I have some experience with planning and zoning, even though my job was as a teacher. Starting in the 70s, I was appointed to the planning board while the town was undergoing a tsunami of development, large development that would harm us. I'm not going to take my time here to tell you what we went through. But let's say that there was, the planning department under that time was abolished, and East Hampton was going under. Well, as we all know, we did make a comeback. And there was a new town board, and I was appointed chair of the planning board. We updated the comprehensive plan, and we also updated the zoning code and the land use map. Then I was elected to the town board and kind of the point person for planning and zoning. So I have some experience in this. This thick DEIS is not complete. It's not. And people were asking for substantive comments. I'll try to give them to you. Because I was also taken to court over all these changes. Twice. We won. But you've got to follow your regulations, because before I was on the board, the planning board and the town board that abolished the planning department were allowing huge developments, but they didn't get to develop them because we stopped them and changed the code. Your responsibility is, as you know, and I just want to get this on the record because it's probably going to go to court, you have exclusive jurisdiction, nobody else. Town board, ZBA, where unfortunately this was heard last night, one of our toughest regulations might be eliminated because people that are dealing with this development don't know what to do with it. And it's the key, our special permit, to be able to make some serious alternatives and changes. And frankly, as someone that worked on that code forever, I'm not happy that you had to give it to the ZBA to decide what's going on. But anyway, it comes back to you, and you guys know it. And we'll hear from them soon. The standard that they are confused about is a special permit, and the uses would curl your hair. We had some uses in our commercial and industrial areas, like, for example, an oil refinery. Wow, I haven't even gotten to my point yet. Okay, I'll see you in the afternoon, because I have all these lined up.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
And remember to submit written comments, because
Sure.
those will all be considered as well. If anybody feels like 3 minutes is not enough time, you can wait until the later session.
But I do want to say, in the afternoon, I want to talk specifically about the areas of the code and secret and special permit that are not addressed. And
We
one
need
is,
to be fair.
I'm done.
Well, we need to be
One
fair
of-
to everybody, because there's more people in the room, and
Got
there's
it.
callers as well.
And the comprehensive plan is not being followed.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Robert Brody.
Hello, my name is Robert Brody, Robert, B-R-O-D-Y. Thank you for listening to me. Everybody's basically said everything I had to say more eloquently and more knowledgeably, if that's a word. But I just want to say a few things. The impact on the traffic, as has been said, I think will be great. I think that the impact on litter in the town, which I know to be quite a big problem, will also be great. The water table, which has also been said, I just want to say that the aquifer, and when I was in high school, I worked a lot in dry cleaning establishments, and one of the things that's been talked about in the application, I'm not sure if I have the right words, was dry cleaning. And I know PERC is pretty bad, and it possibly is as bad as PFAS if it's going into our water. And that's really about all I have to say. I thank you for your time and listening to me. And that's it. I hope you take into consideration everything that most everyone else has said that I just said. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Michelle Vespa.
Hi, Michelle Vespa, M-I-C-H-E-L-L-E, and Vespa's V-E-S-P-A. I'm a resident of Amagansett, and I'm just here today as a concerned citizen. I think all of the expertise that's been shared today sort of reinforced my feeling upon learning about this development that just kind of defies logic for the community and what we've been working toward all these years in terms of reducing the impact on the climate, trying to preserve open spaces, even traffic. I mean, certainly with efforts being made to kind of do the shorter commute train for people to avoid driving, and now, you know, adding this ginormous industrial complex, again, it just, to me, just doesn't make any sense for what the community has responded to over the years in terms of what's important and what we want. So I'm just here today, again, as I said, as a concerned citizen who learned about this and just thought, how could this even possibly be considered in our town? So I hope that you take all the many comments that were shared today by all the experts and just ordinary people like myself who don't want to see this in our town. So thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker, Kathleen Callahan. And just for the planning department, we have, there's 4 more, including Kathleen Callahan. Speakers I have on the sign-up sheet. If we have another sign-up sheet. I don't believe there's anybody else. And then for LTV, after we finish with these last few in-person speakers, we'll go to the phone lines if anybody is on the phone.
Hi there. My name is Kathleen Callahan. Kathleen, K-A-T-H-L-E-E-N, Callahan, C-O-L-I-H-A-N. I'm a resident of East Hampton Town in the hamlet of Springs. And I feel that this is a very important activity that we're all participating in today. So I thank everyone that has spoken and everyone that's here supporting how really important this action is, and that you will consider the thoughts of everyone here, and we're going in the same direction. We have a beautiful area. The hamlets work together. Wainscott is the gateway to the Hamptons. Why do we want to make this area more problematic, endanger the aquifer, endanger Georgica Pond, create the traffic nightmare? We already have a traffic nightmare. Anyone that drives up and down 27, anyone that drives up and down Springs Fireplace Road now in 3 Mile Harbor knows our traffic patterns have changed considerably. So we're adding to all of this. The damage to the roads as far as runoff. We're seeing the effects of this already with wildlife, with birds, bumblebees, bees in general. The environment is constantly being impacted by the choices we make, and we need to seriously consider. We have a hamlet study. This was put into effect by our town, the people that we trust in our local governments. It was a great idea. Let's follow it. Let's look at it seriously and follow the recommendations that are there before us, rather than moving in a direction that is contrary to everything we really hold dear about where we live. And I thank you for your time, and again, everyone that is here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Robert Pine.
I'm Robert Pine, R-O-B-E-R-T-P-I-N-E. I'm a resident of East Hampton and in the hamlet of Springs, and this project is extremely important to me inasmuch as there is a similar site in Springs that has a hamlet plan, and that the hamlet plan for this is not being followed. And as such, I worry what will happen when a similar sand pit in the Springs comes up for review as a project. Will the hamlet plan that has been put together by the town and the citizens there not be followed? It seems to me, what is the point of having a hamlet plan if you just ignore it? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, Chris, I can't quite read this last name, Ganabal, maybe? G-A-N is certainly the start.
Hello, my name is Christine, C-H-R-I-S-T-I-N-E, Ganich, G-A-N-I-T-S-C-H.
Way off, sorry.
No problem. I am a resident of Springs. The East Hampton Comprehensive Plan was a 4.5-year effort, including much public input. The Wainscott Hamlet Plan is now part of the Comprehensive Plan after it was adopted by the Town Board, also including much public input. Within the Comprehensive Plan are 11 summary goals, including the following. Goal 2, take forceful measures to protect and retain the environment, particularly groundwater. Goal 3, reduce total build-out of the town to protect its natural and cultural features. Goal 5, underlined, reduce the environmental impacts of commercial and industrial areas. Goal 11, commit to implementing the comprehensive plan. Based on what was presented today, we can ask, does the current application fulfill these goals? I would suggest it is in complete contradiction to these same goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Anthony, and again, I can't quite see, his last name starts with an L, of Liberatore of Wainscott. Thank you.
Yes, hi. Anthony Liberatore, L-I-B-E-R-A-T-O-R-E. I'm a resident of Wainscott. I'm on the Wainscott CAC, but I'm here as a private citizen. And I live on Wainscott Northwest Road, just south of the highway, so this will impact me. I had a lot of comments about the comprehensive plan. I'll go over some of those. I'm submitting a much longer letter in writing, but this will be the largest subdivision, commercial subdivision development on Long Island's South Fork, and yet the developer has diminished and dismissed the impacts of this project. According to them, the proposed action is the most reasonable and practical option based on the project sponsor's objectives and capabilities. Repeat, the project sponsor's objectives. The proposal does not adequately address the comprehensive plan, the Wainscott Hamlet study, the actual need for such a development, or the obvious significant negative and environmental quality of life impacts. The proposed project does not comply with any of the goals of the comprehensive plan, yet they still state that the proposed project will advance the planning goals of the town and recommendations in Hamlet and business district studies. I believe that the planning board should have deemed the DGIS incomplete just for this reason alone. The Hamlet study plans were an enormous monetary and energy expense for the town and its residents and must be followed. We are now wasting further time and energy evaluating a plan that frankly ignores it. The Hamlet study alternative is half-hearted and totally fails to represent the Hamlet study. More importantly, the town code 255-1-11A states, to guide and regulate the orderly growth, development, and redevelopment of the town in accordance with a comprehensive plan and a long-range objectives, principles, growth set forth therein as beneficial to the interests of the people. I have a lot of comments about how the Hamlet study fails. I'm going to skip that and go to the need for the proposed project. They have not justified a need for 50-lot subdivision. Saying that they want to support the town's dominant, expanding construction, tourism, and second homeowners-driven economy. Everything in the comprehensive plan, the Hamlet study, is the opposite. We want to reduce. We want to do less overdevelopment and protect the aquifer. A couple of things that were missed completely. There are 6 lots offered by the town right north of this proposed project that have been available for years, and they're still vacant. More importantly, I think the omission of the Bistrian sand and gravel pit in the CI market analysis was a huge mistake. The potential redevelopment of this site was addressed in detail in the Springs Hamlet study, and it should have been included in the economics plan. Even if you look at the well-thought-out Hamlet study in Springs for that location, there was plenty of CI lots that were contemplated for that. Please don't approve this plan.
Thank you very much. That is the last speaker we have signed up. I'm just going to circle back to make sure that nobody who might have been skipped came back in the room and wants to speak. Marla Beheman. Keith Gree. Lori Ann. Last name starts with a C. Oh, great.
My name is Lori Ann Chepiel, Lori, second word Ann, A-N-N-E, and the last name is spelled C as in cat, Z as in zebra, E, P as in Peter, I-E-L. I am a resident of Whitney Lane, and I'm a member of, for many years, of the WCAC, although I'm here in a personal capacity. And I hope that the chairman feels better soon. I just wanted to touch on a few points. There were a lot more eloquent and expert speakers before me. First, mismatch. I think Jane Mehring used the word, and John Hall also addressed it, the mismatch between what this CI space offers and what the town needs. In addition to the fine financial and analytical points they made, common sense dictates that this space on the edge of East Hampton town, the western edge, is really not going to be a location where folks who live 26 miles away, up to 26 miles away in Montauk, or up to 15 miles away in Springs, are going to choose to drive through our bumper-to-bumper traffic back and forth every business day to open or start a new business. It's just unreasonable to think that local residents of the town are really going to benefit and use this for local businesses. A second point, failure to consider the south of the highway traffic. One of the traffic experts noted that, and also I would point out that the traffic during the week, having lived here now since COVID for 3 years full-time and lived in my home for 25 years, traffic during the week, business days, off-season, frankly, is much more challenging, much more crowded, and much more dangerous than traffic during the summer weekends, even in July and August. The truck traffic, bumper to bumper, all morning until 10 o'clock, 10:30, 11, going through Wainscott, and then returning, starting at 2 or 2:30, is just unacceptable. And I will point out that some of the folks who help me around my house, I'm single, so I use gardeners and I use electricians who come from those two communities. They won't come to my neighborhood in the summer.
30 seconds.
The last thing I'd like to point out is water. The contamination risk is unacceptable. My home and the water in my home was significantly contaminated a few years ago, to such an extent that the state Department of Health came in, shut down my water, and themselves took care of remediating the water and putting in the filter. Over 70 parts per trillion. I live on Whitney Lane, less than a mile from where this is located. That's not an acceptable outcome in this day and age. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope that you guys will take into account everything that has been said here today.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Lauren Bolger. Okay, so that is all the speakers who have signed up for in person. If we have any callers on the line, we can go to the callers now.
Yes, we do. I am unmuting the first caller. Hello, caller ending.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, good. My name is Robert Abramson, A-A-R-A-M-S-O-N, reading a letter for Leonard Green, L-E-O-N-A-R-D-G-R-E-E-N. Given the town's comprehensive vision, the site's proximity to the already endangered Georgia Pond, and its location in a water protection zone, it is incomprehensible that the Wayne Scott Commercial Center development proposal is being seriously considered. The project will be a major assault on the area's ecosystems. Let's start with traffic. Wayne Scott is already a traffic nightmare. A new commercial center will only increase congestion by adding a significant number of large and idling trucks to the choke point. Unfortunately, this will become more than a maddening inconvenience. The DEIS overlooks the traffic as a serious source of atmospheric nitrogen deposition. While the site's DEIS discusses terrestrial nitrogen sources, it fails to consider atmospheric sources. One of the consequences of the increased traffic will be an increased nitrogen load at the ecologically weakened Georgia Pond, according to the action plan approved by East Hampton trustees April 26, 2021. Atmospheric deposition represented a significant portion of the total nitrogen load to the pond, 21%. Traffic is a major driver of this. The closer you are to the congested roadways, the greater the nitrogen deposition. There is a relatively easy fix for this problem. Plants, working together with valuable soil microbes, clean up the soils. Plants remove the hydrocarbons and nitrates by using them as food and nutrients. They metabolize hydrocarbons and nitrates and remove them completely from the environment. Reduce traffic and plant more trees. The Wayne Scott Commercial Center project will do neither. In fact, it will increase traffic and present the parkland revegetation proposed by the Wayne Scott Hamlet Plan. In addition, the consequences of adding impervious and compacted surfaces to 70 acres in a water protection zone should be sufficient reason to reject the proposal. The assault on the ecosystem that naturally filters our groundwater and structure the soil will be consequential. The current site proposal offers rain gardens as a solution for all the added hardened surfaces. Rain gardens, however, do not exist in isolation. They are part of a complex ecosystem, most of which lives underground. Soil compaction impoverishes this soil biome and the ecosystem it provides. This is not about planting rain gardens. It is about providing the whole system support that native plant communities require to thrive and support us. This is not an aesthetic or cultural preference, preferring parks to malls, for example. It is about understanding that our natural systems are at a tipping point. Every isolated
Thank you. We're going to have to ask you to wrap it up. Your time is up.
Okay. Every isolated decision
In case you didn't hear it before.
Global decision. I'm sorry?
Just a reminder, any written comments you submit will also be considered. So if you have more to say, feel free to or make sure that you submit those in writing.
Okay. I just want to now speak for myself, who's been a 25-year resident of East Hampton and raised my children here. I'd like to add that the decision that you make today, now, will impact the quality of life for generations to come. You have to think of the future and what we are going to leave to our children and their children.
Thank you very much.
Be that we left our town better for the next generation. Thank you.
Okay, we are going to break promptly at 5. Oh, are there any more callers on the line?
There are no other callers on the line.
Okay, great. We are going to break promptly at 5:30. We do have a little bit of time left, and I want, as we've said, these public comments are important. I want to be fair to everybody, so if anybody who
One
has...
more caller just hopped on.
Okay, we're going to go to that caller first.
Hello, caller 1728. You are on the air.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
Patricia Curry, C-U-R-R-I-E, Patricia, P-A-T-R-I-C-I-A. I'm a Noyak resident. You may question why a Southampton resident is commenting on a project in East Hampton. Well, if you look across the street at the East Hampton Airport, you'll get a fairly good idea. Southampton, being west of East Hampton, has borne the brunt of noise and pollution from that airport for decades. It's destroyed the quality of life of tens of thousands of people in neighboring hamlets, your neighbors. It's not difficult to foresee that problems will occur with road traffic through Southampton if this massive development moves forward. Virtually every commodity needed for construction on the 70 acres will be transported by road through Southampton. The developer has stated that there will be no significant impacts. I don't see how that's possible. Certainly there will be significant noise and air pollution from traffic and construction on 50 lots that would change the entire character of the area. We don't even know what types of activity ultimately will be permitted there. As far as transportation is concerned, Noyak Road, formerly a quiet, sleepy residential area on a winding two-lane road, is now a major bypass through residential hamlets to East Hampton. It's the major commuter trade route to East Hampton, or one of them, for hours, every weekday morning and afternoon, for hours. Portions of Noyak Road are so narrow, there is no shoulder, or only a very narrow shoulder on one side, making the road dangerous to navigate and perilous to pedestrians and bicyclists. Frankly, I'm gobsmacked that this DGIS has not included any reference to the diversions of traffic that will occur through your neighboring community. East Hampton is not an island. Everything that comes into East Hampton comes through other communities. So we are going to be very impacted by this. And so is Sag Harbor, already impacted on Ferry Road and through Noyak Road at the junction at Germain and Madison, now a shortcut to Route 114 in East Hampton. That's where a lot of the commuter traffic is going right now, even trade parade trucks, endangering students at Pearson High School. Next, my concern is about the water, because the aquifer is not only the East Hampton aquifer, it is the aquifer of tens of thousands of people in other towns. Suffolk County Water Authority draws water from it. Any substance which enters it affects water quality in all East End communities, and even further west. This development endangers water supply, already threatened due to the toxic plume of forever chemicals that don't break down over time, and which possibly now are creeping south from the airport property.
Your time is up, so please wrap up your comments.
Okay, I'll write more in detail. But East Hampton is one of two South Fork communities. Southampton must be considered in this DGIS. Thank you.
Please do submit written comments, because those will be considered as well.
Okay, we have one more caller on the line.
Okay, next caller.
Caller ending 6118. You are on the air.
Hi,
please state and spell your name for the record.
Abramovic, V like Victor, ICI. Eileen. Like everyone who has spoken here today, I really value the rural nature of our community. I love the fresh air, the drinking water, topography, and access to the ocean. It's the reason I moved here from a New York City suburb. I speak for many East Hampton residents that we do not want more malls, overdevelopment, and subsequent damage to our rural aesthetic. I'm extremely concerned about this proposed massive, large commercial subdivision and development on our already fragile land. The Wainscott Commercial Center will significantly damage the rural character of Wainscott and East Hampton, as it's not harmonious with the existing character of our bucolic community. We do not want more air, noise, and water pollution. This is not sustainable. The project will negatively impact our sole source of precious drinking water and further damage Georgica Pond. It will add to the traffic congestion on Route 27. Please do not approve this nonsensical project, as it will perpetuate overdevelopment and long-term environmental damage, destroying the unique character of our rural community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other callers on the line?
We have no new callers.
Okay, so we're getting very close to break. You know, seeing the way things have unfolded, I noticed a couple of people wanted more time or mentioned they wanted to speak in the afternoon. I do want to be fair to everybody and make sure everybody has a chance to speak first. So just for those people who want to speak later, I will give an opportunity now if anybody wants to come up and use 2 more minutes of your time. That would have been the 5-minute sessions we're saving for later, but it'll be limited to 2. At that point, you're going to be bumped to the back of the line in the afternoon session so that we can make time for everybody to be heard. So anybody who would like to say a few more words? Is there anybody who hasn't spoken? Anybody who has? I see, I think, Jane? Sure, I'll give you 2 minutes now, but just remember, this is, you know, that's all counting toward your time toward later, too.
I'm sorry, so I won't be able to speak in the 5-minute period
We'll
later?
see if there's time at the end next time.
Because
but
otherwise I'll wait till
there was
later.
either a 3 or a 5-minute was the intention, and not for people to sign up on multiple. Just to be fair to everybody, we want to
I
hear all
understand. Yeah,
all
but
comments.
we have time before we break.
Yep,
so I just
absolutely. That's why
wanna-
we're doing it.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. Do I need to re-up my name? Wait.
No, you don't.
Okay. Before I said I wanted to also talk about the alternative section of the DIS, as that's one of the most essential required elements under SECRA. For each of the 5 alternatives, the applicant has also failed to provide analytical support, taking the 5 one by one quickly. The no-action alternative does not comport with the standard defined by SECRA. It's actually an alternative development action in that it has a full build-out of the current 6 parcels. That's not a no-action. Yet, in Table 5.2, the applicant shows there's more impacts from the no action, including a 70% increase in structures and impervious surfaces, a 41% increase in wastewater effluent, and 50% increase in parking spaces. Number 2, the Suffolk cement relocation alternative, it's not an alternative, it's a possible mitigation. Number 3, the sewage treatment plant alternative as presented is also inadequate because it's not apples to apples. They're comparing the STP, but saying that they'll double the build out. So of course, that's not an apples to apples comparison and shows greater impact. The open space alternative is flawed and inadequate. Open space subdivisions generally look for between 25 and 50% of the area protected. Instead, what the applicant has done in this section is they've merely taken the 10% required subdivision buffer and consolidated it into one 7-acre parcel. And here again, the table shows that conditions barely change, impacts barely change, even though it's open space. And 5th, finally, the Hamlet Plan alternative. People have talked about it today. This is the most inadequate and inaccurate of the 5 alternative analyses in total. That needs to include what's really in the Hamlet Plan, and it needs to actually show the applicant developing in a way that is consistent with it. So I just want to, can I just do one more paragraph?
Wrap it up very quickly, a couple sentences.
Okay. One essential part of the market economic benefits that was totally absent from the DIS is a critical study of if and how this project will impact our already yawning 2,000-unit affordable housing deficit. The applicant must estimate how many employees will be required all in and at full build out, and they must show us the expected range of wages that will be earned so that we can assess how many workers will actually be able to afford and live in East Hampton paying market rate for housing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who would like to say a few more words who has already spoken? Deborah Foster? You can 2 minutes, and again, to be fair, just get straight to the point, and if you want to speak later, it'll be after everybody who hasn't yet spoken.
In fact, I want to congratulate you. You've done this very fairly and very well. I think this is all right, right? Yeah. I thought I'd take some time to look at the possible actions that could be taken once the commercial industrial subdivision is, I guess, one of the things you could do is to approve it. The key to this is not to look at this as separate. A simple subdivision, which we think of usually as houses, but a different kind of subdivision that has almost 30 uses, some more harmful than others. The reason we put in a special permit is to be able to say, this might be a use that's okay, but not in an area near Georgia Pond, not in an area that has all the transportation concerns, not in an area that has residents on either side. So it's a critical special area. Even the county gets involved in that. And here are some of the uses if the ZBA takes away this area of the special permit. Air terminal, car wash, animal husbandry, fuel storage tanks, extermination, explosives, manufacture and storage of fireworks. You get the idea. You are not just adopting a subdivision. The potential will be that those uses can be there unless you use the special permit. The special permit is there so you can go through, it's really pretty simple, and have the uses analyzed. Do they have toxic substances that can run off? Are you really meeting the sewage domain? And something like, say, a movie theater. That might not be the right place. Think of the traffic. I'm actually done.
Well, thank you for your comments. Okay, is there anybody else who would like to say anything more in this afternoon session? Who hasn't already spoken twice? It's really hard to see with the lights, so just stand up and come to the front if you'd like to speak. And this is Pamela Mahoney again?
Pamela Mahoney from WHP. And I was almost done. One more step up? Oh, sure. Thanks. But I might as well finish as long as I have the chance. As noted in the Wainscott Hamlet study, reclamation of the sand pit creates a large opportunity for preservation of open space and attractive redevelopment appropriate to Wainscott. It is a guiding document largely informed by community input that was formally appended 2 years ago to the town's comprehensive plan of 2005. Both documents call for a mix of reasonable uses, including open space for passive use and recreation, municipal parking, retail businesses, housing, etc. They also both call for limiting commercial sprawl and development along the highway to maintain functionality and reduce the overall build-out in Wainscott. These guiding documents are intended to reduce ongoing degradation of environmental resources and preserve the unique character of Wainscott. They do not call for a subdivision of the site into a plethora of lots for commercial and industrial use. The zoning codes do not automatically preserve community character. The DIS needs to more fully address consistency with the predominant architectural scale and character of the community surrounding the site. Consistency cannot be achieved with the proposed action, and less massive alternatives should be explored much more thoroughly. The Wainscott Heritage Project hopes the planning board will give all these comments due consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Is there anybody else? I don't see any hands. If I'm missing somebody, feel free to stand up. Otherwise, we will start to wrap up the afternoon session. I know you've heard it before, but I will say it again. Please submit written comments, even if you've spoken tonight. Written comments will be considered the same as your verbal comments. We'll receive those until March 13th. If you just want to put what you said tonight in writing or anything else that comes to mind that you want us to consider. All comments will be considered fully, and so please don't hesitate to submit. Please stand up to the mic, and just a reminder that we really can't get into substantive things. If it's a procedural, simple question, we'll do our best to answer.
If we ask you guys a question...
Michael Mahoney?
Yeah, same guy. If we ask you a question, can we expect an answer?
So the way the process works is this is your time to be heard in person. This is the public hearing. We will take written comments up until March 13th. All of those comments will be fully considered and responded to as part of the final environmental impact statement.
So there will be a response to a question asked of this board?
No, that's our document. So the environmental impact statement, the final, is our document. And all public comments will be addressed in that. So 100% your question will be answered. If you're asking me if it'll be answered tonight, it won't be.
No.
But 100%, all comments, verbal, written, will be considered. We'll go into our process. We'll have a final environmental impact statement. We'll then have findings, which will lead to...
Well, my question is going to be more about the operation of the board and how it's gotten this far.
I think that's the most answer I could give you for now, but all questions will be considered and fully answered as part of the impact statement. Okay, with that, it sounds like there's nobody else who wants to speak. I will make a motion to adjourn, and we will reconvene at 6:30 p.m. for more 3-minute comments in person, followed by phone 3-minute comments, followed by 5-minute comments should anybody think they need the time. All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourned.